All right, here we are live for the second time in a week. And I'm just making sure that everything is coming through before I start talking about anything of substance. All right, here. All right, so now that I heard my voice come through, I know that it's working. And I just wanted to check in, say hello. I'm Carrie, otherwise known as Empowering Educator. And what I like to do is give trauma-informed comedic tarot card readings. And I thought this was a particularly interesting card that came out for me this morning, which is number 13, Death Reversed. Mainly because this is a card that a lot of people see and they're like, what the fuck? I don't want that card in my life. And just saying the words out loud, like death reversed, is interesting in this season of spring, which is when I'm recording and broadcasting this, because death is not something that we can reverse. It is, in theory, a finite state. And yet we see examples of lots of things coming back to quote unquote back to life outside that we thought were dead over the winter. So if I look at this card and think about like what in my life has come back to life after I thought it was dead. I'm not quite in the realm of like zombie territory, but not too far off, because sometimes, and particularly with what like I've been currently going through, I feel like there is a zombie version of myself that is often acting without my conscious brain being aware of it. So as I was saying that, the world card jumped out. So no big deal. The world is like the end of this major arcana cycle, which if you haven't heard of the hero's journey, you're on it. So let me enlighten you. You're thinking about any sort of adventure movie you've ever seen. So the two examples I love to put side by side are Rocky or Mulan. So you can either be fighting yourself in the mirror and working through all of those blocks to external growth that is reflecting sort of the internal work. Or you can venture out into the unknown in order to reclaim your sense of self through cross-dressing, bending gender norms, and ultimately coming home and being yourself, which is the greatest honor that anyone can ever be. So the world card is like the culmination of all of that. So it is when Rocky Balboa has defeated Apollo Creed, spoiler alert, and is kind of like, I was the underdog who was able to beat the heavyweight world champion and prove myself to myself. Or it's when Mulan is back in her family's garden, again, spoiler alert, and she's bringing all of these, gifts from the emperor and stories of her accomplishments, and the father just like pushes them all aside and hugs her and says, like, having you as my daughter is the greatest gift that I could ever have. So like when I see this idea of this like zombie version of myself, like coming back to life and being like, you must produce, you must have your productivity be the basis of your worth, the world card is coming out to be like, you've already finished this cycle. You're already at a point where this has died. This has gone into the compost bin, and it is no longer here to keep you from becoming the best version of yourself, which is the underdog story coming to light, and or being recognized as like our true authentic selves. I also love the image of the lotus here because I have been sort of in a muddy place where I've been between like what is stable and keeps me grounded and rooted versus what fills me up emotionally. And I used to think that I had to choose between those two things. And the last 3 weeks have shown me that I can actually integrate both of those things, which is like, cool. I can play in the mud, and from the mud, the lotus blooms. And all of these different like cyclical circles, concentric circles, that's the word, I paid attention in math, all kind of show like the different cycles like of the moon, of the seasons, and then you have like the cosmos in the background. So it's like everything's going to kind of go through its season, but keep in zombie land the parts of myself that are keeping me from being that full authentic self and accomplishing what I want to accomplish. And then the other card that just jumped out at me is the Nine of Bells, which is this deck's version of the Nine of Swords. Swords is the realm of the mind. And my mind is really fucking good at convincing me both on one extreme to do the thing and on the other extreme to not do the thing. And the longer I spend in my mind, the longer I'm able to convince myself one way or another, which is where this like decision paralysis comes in. The sort of spiral in the back of this is reminding me of what is it? High Anxiety. I think it was a Mel Brooks movie, which I haven't seen since I was like way too young to even know what it meant. But I like had this image of like these people who are like flying backwards or falling backwards into like a red and white swirl. And that's kind of how sometimes it feels when like I am swirling in my brain of like, should I do the thing? Shouldn't I do the thing? And this I feel like is coming up to show me that like, no, again, I've already put that to bed. Like I'm in the realm of the 9 here, which is like, I'm almost at the end here. I get to like turn around and survey all of the good work I've done until this point and really be able to like not be paralyzed by these old ways of doing things. So put the zombie to bed, step into my full authentic self, and allow that like part of me to die. So I'm talking in the first person here because that's all I have the permission to do right now. I haven't gotten anyone's energetic consent to be like, I'm reading for you. And yet my guess is that if you're watching this right now, there's something in this that you needed to hear. So I'm not going to assign any meaning to this. This is what makes this trauma informed. It's not just that I'm really good at traumatizing people as a former teacher. It's that there's no hierarchy. Like you get to take what works for you and trust that if you're watching this, like this is for you. And you can also be like, fuck that, doesn't work for me. And you can move on your merry way. The other thing that's coming up is that one of my tarot influences is Lindsay Mack of Tarot for the Wild Soul. And her interpretation of the Nine of Swords is often one of like a parent who comes into a scared little kid's room who said, like the kid is like, hey, I've got a monster under my bed, or I have a monster in my closet. Normally, a loving parent would be like, I'm so sorry you're scared. Why don't we take a flashlight and look underneath your bed? Why don't we turn on the light and look inside your closet and just make sure, let's reassure you that there are no monsters there. But we have to be brave enough to like look at those places, like the shadowy places, or else like if there are any monsters there, or in my case, zombies, we don't want them to like just go unchecked, right? We want to make sure that we're consistently kind of checking in the closets, checking under the beds and being like, hey, if you're a zombie under there, like you're not allowed here. Goodbye. 9 times out of 10, we're probably not going to find a zombie, but like that's that part of the brain that's kind of like, oh, could you just double check? Which I feel like is just a nice thing to do. It's kind of like a little check-in from my my inner loving parent to be like, okay, my little kid is still my inner little kid is still scared of these old thoughts, these old ways of being coming back to haunt them. Why don't we just like take a little light and take a look and make sure that they aren't there? Because otherwise, those zombies are going to sneak up on us and keep us from fulfilling what it is that we are to fulfill in this world by being our true, authentic selves. And I know that I'm seeing this card, the Nine of Bells, as kind of a like check-in to be like, hey, you're doing better than you thought, Carrie. Like you are almost at the end of this cycle, this death cycle, this rebirth cycle, this end of the world, start back over on the fool's journey. Like what's the next call to adventure? Kind of makes me curious and a little excited about that. So if you're listening to this and this resonated with you, I would love to hear. If I'm just speaking into the void, that's okay. This is good practice for me too, because I am figuring out what this all looks like, but I felt like I needed to have a conversation out loud in front of whoever is watching this, just to kind of like work through what this reverse death card means for me. So again, my name is Carrie. My alias is Empowering Educator. I offer trauma-informed comedic tarot performances here in the Sacramento area and am working towards doing that online in a Patreon space. So if you're here and you liked what you saw, let me know, and hopefully I'll get to engage with you on a more personal level, because talking into the void is like not my thing. Here I am practicing doing it in the hopes that whoever needs to hear it will find their way to it. And also not expecting that that is going to be the outcome of what I'm doing. So happy reverse death, happy zombifying, happy world, and happy checking under the bed and making sure there are no zombies in your closet.